All right, my friends, welcome back. We're going to take another bit of time because Sarah was right. Zelly and Martin are close to us now in time, and there's a lot of material that was used to help us have this robust image of them. So Zelly and Martin work together.
Zelly and Louis. Louis.
Yes, Zelly and Louis. Yes, I have a typo there. Thank you. Zelly and Louis. Yes. Work together to give their children a good spiritual education. They were, all right, so start to listen to their mode of, for themselves as a couple and their family. They were concerned about good spiritual education for their children. They were careful of the amusements the children engaged in and the excessive consumerism of their age. Additionally, they were attentive to the needs of the poor. There's that charity aspect. When a poor person would knock on the family door, the children were taught how to give alms joyfully and personally. The trajectory for Zelly is the same. Therese would follow her in her life. Humble acknowledgement of who she was, relying on the providence of God, and with this faith, a sure hope was born for the service of others. This increasing humility in Zelly countered the anxiety of her youth and was the cause of her joy. She died at the young age of 46, as Sarah said. Not as young as Therese's 24 years, but certainly in the prime of life, with the cares of her children on her mind. Her hope for heaven was the basis of her happiness. She regarded her sufferings from her childhood and the death of her four own children as God's way of teaching her that earth is not our true home. She considered her deceased children's eternal happiness as compensation for her grief and looked forward to being united with them in heaven. Her final illness of breast cancer was a painful death. In light of her unfinished work of raising her children, Zelly made a pilgrimage to Lourdes in the hope of a cure. On pilgrimage, she was reassured by her faith that he who wounds can also heal the wound. Though she was not physically cured of her cancer, Zelly felt as if her prayers were answered, evidenced by her cheerful attitude. She faced her cancer with confidence and fortitude and tried to help her family to do the same. Her witness to the Christian life is urgently needed today, and is why saints of our age are important voices to consider. And I want to, okay. So one of the things that Louis and Zelly chose to do was, well, there are a few things. One was their wedding. They married at midnight so that they could have a more modest wedding, given their prominence in society and so forth. So closer to midnight on July the 12th is when they chose to meet. We're going to see a contra to Gianna Mola. She's going to, right, saints, they are individual. They have a different tack on things. And so she wanted, they would tend to have modest attitudes towards clothing. They didn't dress in rags, and she didn't marry in rags, but then they did not want to be extravagant as well. And here's a quote of hers. I want to become a saint, and that won't be easy. There's a lot of wood to chop, and the wood is as hard as a rock. It would would have been better if I'd tried earlier while it was less difficult. Oh, well, better late than never.
What a great line.
Yes.
I mean, really, you see the absolute humanity there. That is so true. You know, would that I'd worked when the wood was green, right? I mean, how much easier. And what a good lesson to us. You know, there's never a delay to sanctity. I mean, it's a contrast to that with her, with Saint Augustine. You know, Lord, make me a saint, just not quite yet.
Yes, that's right. That's right. All right, my friends, we're going to start straight into Gianna Beretta Mola. 1962 is when she died, and Pietro Mola. She will be beatified in 1994 by John Paul II. Um, they were both Italians in the diaspora. Brazil has a significant population of Italians, followed by Argentina, then the USA. Gianna came from a devout home of 13 children. All of her siblings earned academic degrees, and some received vocations to the priesthood and religious life. Maria, Gianna's mother, made a habit of taking her children to daily mass and the communion rail. Both of her parents, her father Alberto, saw to the children's complete education, both spiritual and secular. Gianna notes that receiving her first Holy Communion at age 5 and confirmation at age 7 were fundamental to her spirituality. And I, I, I just had to note because that's true for my own children. In the traditional Latin Mass, in fact, all of the preceding moderns had that at that time. At her confirmation, she made 2 resolutions. 1, she would rather die than commit mortal sin, and 2, everything for Jesus. In her senior year, both her parents died. She would enter medical school that same year, first in the University of Milan and then Pavia. As a young doctor, she was involved with Catholic Action while keeping a busy life. So again, now we're seeing again this generosity. During her affiliation with Catholic Action, she evangelized and grew in her prayer life. So prayer, that was another big point. From this deepening prayer life, she decided to become a medical missionary in Brazil, a clear indication of her concern for the poor. Gianna had a brother who was a Capuchin friar in Brazil. He had medical training but had discerned a call to the priesthood. While in Brazil, she encountered an engineer, her future husband, Pietro, who was also involved with Catholic Action and other volunteer activities. Gianna began to discern the vocation of marriage. She prayed a lot and asked her friends and siblings to pray for her intentions as well. Her confessor did not tell her what to do, but only said, if all, and so here's a very nice quote, if all good Catholic girls went into the convent, then where would we get our Christian mothers?
Absolutely.
So we'll see if you have some remarks there, and then we'll pick up with her in the next show.
Yeah, I to me, I think it's telling. Just the Zélie Martin, excuse me, had 9 children, right? And Gianna Beretta Mola is one of 13 children. And there is something telling in that, in regards to what you were talking about, those 4 F's, that fruitfulness must be, or at a bare minimum, an openness to the bounteous gifts that our Lord wants to give the modern world through the woman children. I think we have lost such a fundamental respect for life, of course, but when you lose that respect for the baby in the womb, you have already lost respect for the mother. And tragically, she has lost respect for herself. And I think that we cannot expect generosity from God when we are stingy with ourselves, right? There has to be within, and we see that, and truly we're going to see it with Gianna Mola, the absolute generosity of her selfless motherhood.
That's right.
But that really, that can only have been, given to her through the reality of what she had lived in her own family and what that meant. And I think often of my own self, right? I'm the youngest of 10. And I know that being born, in 1968, I am a post birth control baby. And so I am always thankful that my parents were willing to walk that extra mile, because I jokingly say it, but I'm quote unquote low rank on the totem pole of life, right? If my mom gave one back, it's me, right? So we must get over our fear of children. We must not listen to the world when the world tells us that they are problems and that they're burdens and that they're expensive and blah 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 blah, because they are only ever and always blessings. And there cannot be a more beautiful blessing that our Lord gives to a marriage than a child. It's just not possible, because it is actually the tangible, visible sign of the two flesh becoming one, and
Okay.
how profoundly beautiful that is. So I think that that really, in regards to this element of marriage, those two speak most profoundly to that element of fruitfulness.
That's correct. Absolutely. All right, my friends, let us pick up with the rest of John in the next episode. Till then, Fides, Horatio.